Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Is Letecia Stauch worse than Jodi Arias? We're going to find out in Stauch's 4-page letter to Judge Gregory Werner, written in February 2021. It takes a certain kind of brazen individual or foolish individual to commit murder and then think they can get away with it. But there's a similar kind of brazenness at work here, do you notice? Where Letecia thinks she can play the court system and get away with it. She imagines a combination of mental illness or mental health issues and undermining her own counsel, that will win her sympathy from the court. Yes, it will to a degree, but eventually the court's patience is going to run out. The court is primarily interested in whether she committed this crime or not, and even her own counsel appear to have lost patience with her. Her admission that they're already trying to find evidence in mitigation suggests they think Letecia doesn't have a case and that her goose is cooked. Well, we're going to get a sense of whether that's true or not, whether Letecia's goose is cooked from the letter. In her letter, she writes to Judge Werner because Judge Bain isn't available. Her defenses seem to include the fact that she's delusional and that someone else is guilty. That's not really a defense. She also refers repeatedly to her biological son, but never once mentions Gannon's name. So we're going to get to that letter in a moment. I'm going to read all 4 pages verbatim. But before we get to that, I just want to let you know I have written a book on the Letecia Stauch case called Boy Interrupted. It's available on Kindle, that includes Kindle Unlimited, as well as on paperback. I'll put a link in the description. Before we get started, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So the letter is dated the 21st of February, so it's basically written a little bit more than a month ago, and it's addressed to Judge Werner. It is got a sort of a heading, conflict hearing information, right? And her letter is stamped March 8th, 2021. Now, I don't know whether I've been dealing with the Ramsey ransom note too much, but there's something similarly flaky about this note. The handwriting, the fact that it also spans about 3-4 pages, and also the contents of it just feels crazy, doesn't it? Anyway, let's go through it. On the 19th of February 2021, I was unable to talk with Judge Bain about my conflicts with my defense team due to 1, the actual privacy of the booth and the transport over. I explained in detail to him, expressing my concerns of privacy. 2, I had a very difficult morning mentally because I'm not mentally well. One of the main issues with my attorneys is their lack of ability to gather evidence. Due to this, I find little value in the term expert. Now, I've got to say, saying that, issue with the attorneys that they lack ability to gather evidence. What's this evidence? Is it evidence that somebody else did it? Well, you can imagine that being difficult to gather. She goes on to say, due to this, I find little value in the term expert. First, they were unable to obtain my mental health records from Charleston, South Carolina, when I finally paid a firm in South Carolina to obtain them. In 2016, I was diagnosed with, and that is redacted, it's quite a long thing. I wonder if it's not bipolar disorder or something, but what would fit into that space? And then she says, and received treatment before work for over 28 hours of care. The school district even provided extra services and later let me medically resign due to the ongoing reality breaks. In 2018, I was hospitalized in Canada, crossing the border for 2 days, and completed more, it says OP treatment when I returned. I tell you this because it sets the stage for why I cannot work with my attorneys. I signed release forms for them to get all this information so they would have a better understanding of why I'm all over the place some days. I asked them to use the info from a non-biased doctor who worked with me more than 2 hours, but instead they sent a lady who was clearly an actress and friends with the DA. She spoke about him in an unprofessional manner, their history and his election. Now I'm sure all of this was true, but I thought she worked for the court, not one particular side. So it's quite interesting how she's sort of setting up other subplots in this letter, isn't it? She goes on to say, my attorneys did this to make me look like a perjurious individual. Instead, it was malfeasances on their part. I've included several reasons to support my claim as I kept a timeline of these conflicts, and then she lists them on page 2. Communication is broken beyond repair. I explained these issues to Judge Bain, including the lack of access and visitations in complete detail. So where she gives these reasons, she doesn't really give a reason. She refers to explaining it to somebody else. Then, inconsiderate of evidence. I'm not quite sure what that means. Since March 2020, I asked my attorneys to preserve the GameStop footage, to locate the Texas police officer whom I spoke with, and to get the cruise passenger list. Instead, they spent months contacting my family for mitigation. When asked certain things, they kept saying they will let the investigators know. 1 year later, same answer. My evidence. I haven't physically seen any while being held at the prison for 1 year. Yes, COVID, but inmates were still being held as our constitutional rights were adjusted. Overlooking statute and evidence. They overlooked the competency statute about video recording. Human error? Okay, but this happens often with evidence in which me, the non-expert, has to provide corrections to evidence. Sharing info. They were texting my family and giving them info that they should not have, causing several disputes. My judge. They filed that motion knowing this county would not grant me new attorneys to sabotage my chances of a trial by judge. I'm not sure if that shouldn't be by jury. Anyway, they knew I wanted to present evidence to him without exposing any info on my son's father. However, they created incorrect conflicts instead of addressing the real issues. They could have filed the pros or pro se only instead of talking about my defense to sabotage my trial by judge. This just feels all over the place. Defenses. This part is truly absurd. Indeed, I am innocent, but I will not put myself or others in danger running the defense against my biological son when the system is letting 2 men run free who are involved. One is a prominent member of an independent business. They used the NGRI to get a hearing, knowing I'm not guilty, to cover up their lack of representation. Although I had bouts of insanity and still do, I did not murder or abuse anyone, nor would that be a defense, because it's my understanding that you actually did do it. So what she's saying there is, it seems like she's saying that she has bouts of insanity, that she's delusional, but that doesn't mean she committed the crime. She didn't commit the crime, but she's got bouts of insanity and being delusional. She says, however, I will protect my bio son, and I will protect the drugs and violence documented from my son. The truth is the court is holding the wrong person and for the wrong crimes. This whole process has been nefarious, from denying me an attorney, threatening me in the bathroom, away from cameras to confess, taking advantage of me being delusional, threatening my other kids' freedom or else, etc. I'm going to keep making it known, sir, just how much the state has done in this wrongful incarceration. We're now on page 4. I will continue to be an advocate for myself because I'm not a murderer, and the level that the prosecution goes through to promote a wrongful conviction is absurd. Truth is they could see a video from someone else and they would dismiss that person as a lunatic. They have far too much invested in this wrongful incarceration to admit they were or are wrong. For these reasons, and because my defense team is in cahoots with them, I'm left with no other choice but to represent myself. Denying me, and I must say this is the biggest irony of all, is that Letecia seems to acknowledge that she's delusional, but feels that she should represent herself. Now, she almost seems to be cleverly, or slyly, maybe not cleverly, invalidating her own defense before she makes it. So in other words, before she defends herself, she defines herself and diagnoses herself as delusional, and then no matter what the judge then says, she can say afterwards, yes, but you shouldn't have let me defend myself because I'm delusional. That seems to be the kind of crazy angle that she's playing at. Of course, in a court situation, she would be asked, are you of sound mind? And that will definitely be established through relatively scientific means, and that has been established through tests, right? She goes on to say, denying me my rights under the Constitution has happened throughout this process, from the detectives, the jail, and now my legal team. So she's absolutely the victim. Every day I'm getting worse mentally due to inadequate representation and being held hostage for a crime I did not commit. These are my conflict issues and my reason for asking to go pro se. As always, thank you for your time. And then it's signed Letecia Stauch. I could go into the handwriting here, just that the size of it changes. What I do think is quite impressive is that there are virtually no spelling mistakes and words corrected, besides where she says to locate. I think the D is scratched out there, but it is fairly neatly written, but the handwriting is sort of small and large. It's more the content of the handwriting that is different. I do think if you got a handwriting expert to diagnose Letecia, you would say the handwriting doesn't look like a delusional person. Whoever wrote this thought carefully and was quite succinct in describing their delusion, and obviously wrote this in a rare moment of mental clarity. What do you guys think? Thank you for listening, and look out for my next video on the JonBenet Ramsey case, where we'll look at the leaf debris in front of the basement window. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.